Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and I have a fabulous guest here with me today. Someone I'm so excited to talk to because we have something really amazing brewing. She is a soon to be colleague of mine, Asha Altun, who is a clinical psychotherapist. Asha works in the field of addiction recovery, but she also leads the family group for West Coast Sober Living's recovery program because families need recovery too. And this is a topic that is so close to my heart. I believe that this is such a missing piece in addiction recovery, and that when we have someone suffering, everyone around them has their own healing to do. So I'm so grateful to have you here, Asha. And yeah, welcome.
I'm sure you say that about everybody, but it's fine. I'll take it.
I don't. And so before we get started, you have your own history with addiction. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm about 10 and a half years clean and sober now. I got clean when I was I was 24 years old when I first ever entered into the realm of the possibility of not using drugs on a daily basis. And up until that point, I feel like I've lived like 7 different lives since then, but my life before was, I don't even recognize it anymore. I didn't work, I didn't pass high school. I didn't have a license. I had never had a bill under my name. Like nothing about being an adult was something that I had experienced. I was homeless. I resorted to crime, it's all taken care of now. And I had nobody in my life, essentially. My family had gotten sick of watching me kill myself.
Mhm.
And for an addict, one of the things that we use as an excuse is that we don't want them to see us that way. So we just kind of cut them out of our lives completely.
Right. Is that shame, a combination of shame and the desire to use unimpeded?
Yeah, it's just that we can tell when we look at somebody who's looking at us and they're like heartbroken, and it's just like such a horrible feeling. It's like I'd just rather not even put you through this or put me through this. And so that's a big reason why a lot of times, families will kind of like lose connection with a loved one that's using.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up in BC. I'm from Alberta originally. Um, I'd ended up in BC and I was homeless in Mission for about, I'll say 7 months. Always change between 6 and 9. I don't know what it was. It was a really like cloudy time in my life. All I know is it was during the worst part of the year, the
Mm-hmm.
season. It was cold. It was raining all the time. I would sleep under just like an awning that was attached to an elementary school. And the moms would come up to me in the morning and just gently touch me and be like, hey, like, you got to go. Our kids are going to be coming around or whatever. And yeah, that I just went like that for a while because I had never even, recovery had never even been, there was nothing in Alberta that told me about recovery, told me about like any 12-step based meetings, gave me any, resources or anything like that. Nothing. Like I was totally blind. I ended up going to detox, and from there, I made the decision to go to treatment. And it was just I don't know, it was such a fleeting decision. Like I always explain it like it's like the sliding door effect. It was this close. There was no reason why I shouldn't have said no. And then went back to Mission, waited for my boyfriend to get out of jail and just continue on my life.
I've
Right.
heard this so many times. Can you talk a little bit about this like window of clarity that comes in addiction? And it's so small and so short. And if we don't get people into treatment right when they're in that window of clarity, it's likely not happening, right?
Yeah, well, imagine like you had a box and you were filling the box up with stuff and you got to like the absolute most capacity that the box could have. And then for a brief moment, it like adjusted to it almost broke a little bit, or it, stretched out or popped something out. And then there's room for a second,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. Like you're still so like deep in addiction, all your everything about your thought process addiction, but there's so much shame, guilt, like the experiences that you're having, the stuff you're going through that like it just every once in a while, like your brain kind of pops and it's just like, oh my God, I need to get out of this. But very quickly, we just can stuff it back in and go back to using and not think about it for such a long time, right?
Right. And this is a common experience. And I think that we get what I hear from a lot of, because a lot of the work that I do as well is with the families of people who love someone in addiction. And what I hear, two things I want to address around what you said. Number one is I've had people sitting in my office with their addicted person saying, but you have so much potential. And don't you see how much I can see for you? And I say immediately, stop it. What are you doing? Do you not think that they feel enough shame already? Like that is not helpful. We have to get to a place of meeting people where they are, like just meeting them and seeing them and loving them as they are and as they aren't. That's my belief. That's been my experience. And then secondly, this little window, I think that so often families get very excited about, they said they're going to go. And then at the last minute, when they ditch out and they don't go to treatment, they look at it as a character flaw or that they are untrustworthy, when in fact, it's a very predictable part of the disease of addiction.
Yeah, you make such a good point. People who continue to relapse or never really get into recovery, like the idea of being in addiction is very looked down upon, and it kind of looks like you're weak, like you're not smart enough to get it. Like that's the impression that I would get from people, and it couldn't be farther from the truth, first of all. But something that I like to do with families is of like obviously meet the addict where they're at and do it with love and compassion. But moreover, because I'm not really ever with the addict, I'm always with the family. I asked them to kind of explain what their purpose of for even needing to say that kind of stuff is. Where are you going with this? What's your
Mhm.
intent? And they can
Mhm.
never give you a good reason. They're just like, "Oh, I'm trying to boost their confidence." I'm like, "Really? Is that what's like, do you think that that's happening? You're going to be like, "You have so much potential." And all of a sudden they're going to be like, "You're right. So much potential." And then get well. Like that's not how it works. I'm like, "So you're doing this as a way to self-regulate and to make it feel somewhat okay for yourself that you're helping, right? And it's not helpful."
My son's addiction turned me into somebody I never thought I'd be. I tried to control everything. I freaked out a lot. I tried everything from trying to, control him, shame him, blame him, just love him, like all of it. And then I finally got to a place where I realized, well, I could lose him. Like he could die. And what was most important to me? And what was most important to me was that he knew he was loved exactly as he is and that he didn't need to be different. And so I actually called him and I said, I apologize for making you wrong for being an addict. I can imagine that no one wants to be an addict and it must be terrifying for you. And I'm sorry that the person who should love you the most in the world has been making you wrong for that when I should be your ally. And he was like, Mom, you didn't do this. And that was the first attempt. It was shortly after that was his first time trying to get clean. Now it was a decade before he actually got clean, but that was the turning point when he felt he had someone in his corner. Now, I also had to learn how to let go of control. I had to learn how to create boundaries that I could uphold with love. And I had to learn how to communicate and then take care of myself and ask for help. So there was so much healing that I had to take responsibility for so that whether my son used or didn't use or got clean or didn't get clean, that I would still be okay. And I think that what I have seen so much in working with families is they focus so much on when my person gets clean, my life will be okay. And that is not the case. You might get 60 days of sleep when they go to rehab.
Yep.
What do you have to say about that, Asha?
Was just thinking while you're talking, you talk so much from the soul, and it's very much about connection and whatnot to people. And I'm very analytical, like everything about addiction and the process, it has to make sense to me in my brain. And I think that becomes very helpful for people when I'm explaining to them how like they have absolutely no control in this situation, and that the only thing that they can do is love the person and take care of themselves. And like I've heard, like there's so much around detaching with love. People hate that saying or they love it, right? I go on little rampages on Instagram when therapists like will post something like about how toxic detaching with love is. Literally what it means is the ability to love somebody without it negatively affecting you. So I don't understand how that could be toxic.
A
It's
hundred
not like
percent. Yeah.
you're throwing them out onto the street or you're like turning your back on them or all these things that you think they think it is. It's literally just being able to separate yourself from your partner, whomever, like not have two people suffering, right? One's already suffering and that's horrible and we would do anything to make it better, but there's no point in the other person suffering. It usually happens because we feel guilty. We don't want to like
Yes.
be okay.
I had a revelation maybe, probably 4 or 5 years before my son's addiction almost killed him, and then he finally got clean, and he's been clean for coming up to 3 years now, and I actually in 3 days, he'll be 3 years clean. It's crazy. We never thought we'd see that day, but what I realized was I woke up one day and I remember just very clearly knowing this. Addiction was going to destroy and take a large chunk of, and if not my son's whole life. How much of my life I let it take, that's up to me.
Yeah.
So I can let it come in and take me too, or I can find a way to be with it. And I think that this is the thing. We get this like tough love, basically, I cut you out, or total enabling. Then you're getting run over as a parent or a family member, or people that just don't understand and they think it's a character flaw. But the reality is, it's like any kind of suffering, whether it's addiction or it's cancer or it's grief. One of the things that we're not taught as human beings is how to be with suffering, how to be with someone who's in pain and not flinch. And I think in all the stories of recovery that I've heard, and I mean, my son's story with Ronnie, Ronnie never flinched. He just looked at him like, I'm going to love the shit out of you, and never flinched. And if we can, as families, learn not to flinch in the face of someone suffering and then tap into being our highest selves, then we can be of service.
Yes.
But as long as we're reacting and trying to control, we're just part of the problem.
That'll never.
How difficult is it for someone who goes to treatment and comes out into the same environment with their family? How difficult is that for them to maintain being clean if they're in a family who's trying to control and react and they haven't done the work?
It's not well. That's to say, like, they go and live back with them.
Hmm.
I would never, like, I would do everything I could to make sure that didn't happen. If it absolutely had to happen, I would set up a very strong, like, relapse prevention plan with the intent that this person would find alternative, because you can't get clean and then stay healthy in an environment that doesn't understand that process, right? And parents and family members, like, there's a lot that happens for them. There's so much resentment, right? Fear, like they're on this roller coaster of emotions. And then this person goes to treatment and they're left to kind of just figure out what's happening. If that person were to come back into that, what's to say that the family isn't in their right to be like, so when are you going to apologize about this? Or like, when are you going to make up for this? And it's like, well, you can't tell me not to drink. That's your thing. It's not mine. Like, there's just so many things that it's not up to the family to consider, but it is up to us as the people going back into that environment to consider.
Mm.
If a family doesn't want to get well, and I've had that happen many times with my clients, families are like, this is not my problem, like, deal with them. It's the work then goes into like, you need to make the decision around who you bring into your life, like
Mhm.
over big periods of time.
Yeah. And I think, though, that as someone who's been around recovery a lot, because my first husband was an addict as well, and he eventually drank himself to death in a hotel room when he was 51 years old. It was the saddest outcome. And so I've been exposed to addiction since I was very young. And what I can say is that until I took responsibility for my own happiness and my results in life, my ability to communicate, my ability to kindly state boundaries and hold them, my ability to listen without needing to fix. Like, all of those skills came through living with addiction around me. And so I actually look at it as a blessing now. I'm like, it was the greatest personal development program I've ever been on. I had to look for healing in myself through yoga, then through coaching, through like all of these modalities. And then I've made it my mission to try to help others. But what I see is when people feel powerless, the first thing they want to do is blame. And I want to also like not vilify the families. Of course you want to blame. You're powerless. You feel like you're going to lose someone you love, and you like that's a natural thing that we do. And a blame is like a discharge of shame and guilt. We feel shame that we can't help them and guilty that it might be somehow our fault. And that's where I want to have a lot of compassion for the families that love them too, not just to say you're doing it wrong and you need recovery too, but like this disease affects everyone negatively, and we all have some healing to do. So let's
And we
talk about
all
like,
have to take it from a different angle,
yeah,
which is also
like
confusing.
yoga's not for everyone, but that's what
Mhm,
worked for me. And
mhm.
family group is a great thing to join. I mean, I wish there was a family group when I started. I went to Al-Anon a couple times and I thought I would rather hit myself in the face with a brick. Honestly, it was just not for me. And then like to find a family group was I couldn't believe the healing in just listening to other people's stories. Cause what I realized was I could have taken my kid and traded him with anyone else's kid, and the story would have been exactly the same. And I was like, oh my God, it's not us.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. It's not the parents. It's funny how we can admit or like acknowledge that addiction is a disease like cancer, but we would never look at somebody who has cancer and be like, oh, what did I do to cause this? Or like,
right.
what's the character flaw that made them susceptible to this? Yeah, we do it with addiction because I'm not sure why. I think people think it's like a learned behavior.
Yeah, I've wondered about that, but I think culturally we're just coming into a new era where because it's so explosive and so prevalent, where we're forced to look at it. We can't turn away anymore, and we can't hide it or sweep it under the rug as a family secret. And so we're forced to understand it. But I think that ignorance is, the cause of previous behaviors. Talk to me a little bit about what is the value for a family of someone who struggles with addiction in coming to, West Coast Sober Living offers a family group on Wednesday nights. We offer a family group on Thursday nights, and these are free resources that anyone who loves an addict can just join these meetings, get some resources. What can people like? Why would someone want to go to something like that, Ash?
So it's a 1 hour group. It's super quick given how many people show up. But the whole idea is pretty much I run the group. My outcome is that people begin to feel more confident in their
Hmm.
decisions that they're making, that people can like have some clarity in what they can like there's always this what can I and cannot say, like just education.
Hmm.
Like of course stuff you could probably Google or like but you need to hear it from somebody that like no, you're allowed to ask that person to leave. You're allowed to set this boundary. You're allowed to feel that way. So that's pretty much what the entire group is. And then all of the people kind of become their own little support group, and they help each other through experiences because it's like a continuous flow of people, right? So there's some that have been there for, years, some that are just coming in. You can guarantee that if you are coming with a problem, someone else has experienced it already. And it's just so invaluable to be able to bounce, like have a sounding board.
Hmm.
There's nobody else that will understand you like another person dealing with the same thing, right? And a lot of
Yes.
people find it really hard to go into their work and be like, hey, do you have a drug addicted son? Because I have some stuff I want to talk about,
Yeah.
right?
I remember hiding it because I didn't want people to know because I felt like it was a failure on my part. I thought it was my fault.
100%.
And so there was something really revelatory for me to be able to go and listen to other parents and go, oh my God, this might not be even about me. And then I started to shift the lens to like, well, how do I best help? And it's not about controlling. I realized how I could best help was, yeah, like tend to my own garden over here, water these seeds and build some resilience and some skills, communication skills, boundaries, also nervous system resilience, like things like breath work, yoga, getting outside in nature, taking care of our nervous system.
Yeah, our nervous
A
system
lot of these
people.
families have been in an onslaught of trauma for years. I mean, for me, it was 15 years. And I would say Nick's been clean for 3 years. Probably only in the past 8 months has my nervous system fully returned to like regulated.
Yeah,
Yeah, crazy.
it's horrible.
And so we
And the
have to
thing is
learn that.
oh, I was gonna say, and the thing is that we still somehow believe that if we are in the trenches with them, that because we're not the ones using, we can pull ourselves out immediately and be the strength that they need when they get well. But the reality is that you will deplete yourself of everything and be like useless. You will be of no help to anybody.
Mhm.
And it's like I think people just they don't have a proper idea of what addiction can do and like how it can like truly affect you in a way you can't just fix on your own or like fix immediately.
Yeah, and I think that as a community, like, as we you can't walk into any size community now and not see homelessness, like, very sick people very sick in addiction like we've never seen before. The people shaped like a question mark, passed out from fentanyl and rifling through bags, and we're just you can't escape it now. We're all forced as a society to look at it, and I think that it is as a society that we heal. And it's our job as members of the bigger tribe of humanity to say, our brothers and sisters and sons and daughters are suffering. How do we wrap our arms around this problem and be better so that there's a container for them to heal when they're ready? And that's, I think, what you and I are trying to do here. So let's talk about that.
100%. That is what we are trying to do. I You're the big scale person, you're the large scale, and I'm the very, very small scale. Like as long as I'm helping, one mom or one husband or wife, like I am that's like the most I feel like I can do because going what I feel like I'm going up against in regards to society is so much more than like teaching families how to react or act in an addiction. Like
Changing the
there's just
fabric of the culture, the
yeah,
way that we speak about it, the way that we love people. That's massive. But what you're saying is, like you say, I'm on a bigger scale. No, I have a bigger platform, not on a bigger scale. I can only help one person at a time too. And like what you're doing is important because that's how we heal the world with the person that's right in front of us. And if we can help yeah, Trump just dropped a freaking bomb on Iran. Well, I can't do anything about that. But guess what? I can help a mom who's trying to get through her daughter's addiction right now. And so can you. And that's life transforming, that's world changing. So
yeah,
don't
true.
diminish what you're not small potatoes, my friend. So, Asha and I are embarking on an incredible project. We have recognized the value in family programs that we've both created and run and though realize the value in an immersive experience. So many people who struggle with addiction go to treatment at an exorbitant cost, usually to the family. And the family is stuck at home doing no work while this person may or may not get clean or get kicked out or maybe whatever happens. And they don't ever get an experience for them as to like, how do we take this information and implement it? How can we role play and get this stuff in our bones? What's the science behind it? How can we come together? All of those things. And so we are creating the first, in conjunction with West Coast Sober Living, family retreat led by you and I in Summerland in October of 2025. I couldn't be more stoked about this because I just feel like there are so many families out there that can benefit from a weekend together, learning great skills, hearing the stories, feeling not alone, and then leaving feeling confident that they have a plan, that they have some skills, that they are more resilient because of their time there, and mostly that they're not alone.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well. I feel as though giving someone or people the option to have like a condensed version of what you and I do on a regular basis, it's going to be so much information. It's going to be so much healing, so much self reflection. And that's the basis of, my counseling is taking people through a process where at the end they know themselves better so that they can make decisions, like informed decisions on addiction and on recovery.
I think this is the thing. So when we're with someone in addiction, we get reactive, which is outformed. I'm reacting to what is outside of me. And it's like you're just in reaction. To come to something like this and get some skills allows you to be informed, formed from within, formed from the center, what matters most to you, from your convictions, from your values and truth. And we would never tell anyone what those are or what their boundaries should be. Just find out what they are and help them implement what's important to them. I get questioned all the time, like, is this an appropriate boundary? I'm like, I don't know. Is it for you? Because we can all only determine what matters most to us and then implement.
I know. And everyone wants like solid, just tell me what to do. Tell me what it is that you want to do. And I'm like, no, how about we split paths and go down both of them and see what happens and which one you like more or less, right?
Yeah, because that's also a form of abdicating responsibility. People are afraid to do the wrong thing, and there's really no wrong thing. There's been times when I completely enabled my son, and there was times when I was like, "Fuck you," like, my goal was eventually to try to be somewhere in the middle of that, but it took trial and error and what felt good, what didn't feel good, what worked, what didn't work. But what I am so excited about is that both you and I have some tried, tested, and true pathways and skill sets that can be taught, that can be repeated, that can make people's lives immediately more manageable.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's not this hokey pokey, like, oh, it'll come to you when it comes to you type situation. It's you're going to leave there and have like tangible, pragmatic steps to like to situations that you will get into as a result of addiction, ways to like alleviate yourself of stress and yeah.
Was thinking about why it was so hard to do some of the things that I ended up having to do. And it's because we're taught what it is to be a mother, what it is to be
Yes.
loyal, what it is to be respectful, like all of that. And at some point, we all feel like we're going to have to abandon, betray, and disappoint someone to get well. And that's just a fucking fact. We're going to have to abandon, betray, and disappoint someone. Well, guess what? No one dies from any of those things. And we have to get clear, because if you don't, you're going to abandon, betray, and disappoint yourself. And this is what I think we're going to move people from, is that self-abandonment into self-empowerment, and in a way that allows them to still love their people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny that you say that about the mother. I often have like explain to people that it makes sense that they have this idea of what a mother should do
Mhm.
when their child is in crisis. Doesn't matter that they're an adult child. It's like you're their mother, like you're supposed to show up for them. And I like to use the example of like having a child that has diabetes as opposed to having a child that doesn't. Are you going to take your child to the carnival and let them act as if they didn't have diabetes because that's what normal kids do? And are you going to throw away all your knowledge around how you take care of them because that's what normal kids do so that you can feel like a normal mom or someone that people look at? No, you adapt your parenting style to that child. You adapt their lifestyle. Everything changes, right? And that's exactly how it is with addiction. Everything changes. You have to adapt the way that you interact with people who are using in a really, really important way.
Say a little bit about that. Like, I've had these conversations with my son. His drug of choice was fentanyl, so it wasn't alcohol. I come from a family that, my other sons are walking around with a can of Bud Light in their hand most of the time. They don't have a problem with it. And I always ask Nick, like, is that okay? Like, I don't. He's like, Mom, it was never my drug of choice. That does not bother me. But I think it's important to have those conversations, because for each individual person, it's going to be a different thing.
Yeah, I always like to give insight around what it means to have knowledge around something in order to hold someone accountable, and have knowledge around something because there's like a fear behind it, if that makes any sense.
Say more about that.
Well, like you said, everyone is different, right? Like a person could come home for Christmas dinner from treatment or whatever, and alcohol is totally fine for them. And another person, it could be like, no, I need you to put that away. Like I'm not able to, like, I just don't want to be around it. Those two decisions are dependent on the person.
Right.
And it is the person that will, if they're setting that boundary, will
Hmm.
be able to explain why that boundary is there. Right.
Hmm.
And if they're
Yeah.
not setting that boundary, clarifying, like, is this something that's going to bother you? Looks a lot different than being like, are you sure you're not supposed to have, alcohol around? Or like, what, we can do it if you want, like just creating this scenario that doesn't need to be there, or this
Yeah.
fear, or like or not expectation, accusation almost, where it's
Totally.
right.
Well, like I asked Nick several times and his girlfriend, who you also know, she's an amazing little human too. And like not just does it bother you, but does it trigger you? Is it offensive if they're like because I'm happy to remove things, whatever. And they both are like, this was not our thing. And also, we would feel worse if everyone's adjusting and walking on eggshells for us when that has nothing to do with our stuff.
Yeah.
And though, like early on when Nick was in recovery, I didn't want anything anywhere near around him, but that was me bracing too,
Yes. Yeah.
just bracing. And I had to realize that had nothing to do with him. That was me, my fear.
And letting go of that fear is letting them be the one to tell you,
Yes.
right? Letting them be the one to tell you instead of the probing and digging.
Managing.
Yes.
I
And
just thought I
you
was
know,
being
it's
respectful, but then,
totally.
and I'm grateful because my son and I have a great relationship. He's like, Mom, relax. It's fine. But you're right. I love that. Like, they're responsible for their sobriety
It's a
and they're
good first
responsible.
step, right? In letting
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, letting go of like managing that. Ooh, that's a good one. What is the most common mistake that families make when they're in the throes of trying to rescue a loved one from addiction?
I think the most common mistake is feeling like it's necessary for them to exert all of their resources to their person in order to help. And so, what saving or helping looks like is like consistently giving them money, or allowing them to stay in their house when they're using, or letting them borrow stuff, or just anything that is like a resource to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just nonstop, right? Giving, because they don't understand that that's like super inappropriate. I mean, not inappropriate, it's unnecessary, and it shouldn't happen. And it's a really hard one for people to break too, like to tell somebody like you need like if you want to separate yourself from their addiction and you don't want to be a part of their addiction, you only want to be a part of their recovery, you need to stop giving them money, or you need to stop letting them stay in your home. Like everything that you do to support addiction does just that. It supports addiction. It's not supporting the person. And that's where a lot of people they have opinions about it, which is fine. As an addict who had parents on both sides of the spectrum, I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you that the parent that was catering to me,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed sick a lot longer
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't have any resources. And
Yeah. I remember just making a decision that I would never give my son money. I would always make sure I had a phone because I wanted him to be able to phone for
yes,
help. And I
yes,
wanted him, and I was so no matter how many times he lost his phone or got it stolen, I would just no questions asked replace his phone. And sometimes I would send him food because I didn't want him to starve. And I even felt like that was a little over the line there, but I was like, as a mom, that's what I could get to. And this is again where there's that gray area. It's like, what can you handle?
yes.
What makes you be able to sleep at night?
And that situation is not like exhausting all your resources. You're
No.
just trying to help out in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And really trying to get me to be able to sleep at night because if I think my son's starving in a parking garage, I'm
Yes.
laying there wide awake. Whereas if I send the kid a pizza and I know he has a phone, at least I know he's not hungry. He probably sold the pizza for dope. But anyways, it's
No, the phone.
the phone. Yeah.
I know it's a lot of people don't like to hear that, like psychologically, everything that we do to help another person is a form of self-regulation.
100%. When we
Yeah.
talk about the drama triangle, you've got the victim and the persecutor and the rescuer. We want to rescue because it makes us feel significant, like we're important in someone else's life. It negates our feeling of powerlessness, but it also sends a message to the person being rescued that I don't believe you're capable. And
Yes.
that creates more shame.
Yeah.
And so
A lot
when
of
we
people don't get that.
yeah, they don't. And this is really what you and I are going to bring to the table for families is like teach them how to jump out of that drama triangle, stop rescuing and start living what they're a yes for in their lives and realize that what's the old expression? They didn't cause it, they can't cure it, and they can't control it or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that.
I think that there's so much knowledge out there. And yeah, you can Google things, but implementation takes
Yes.
practice.
Yes.
this retreat is an opportunity for people to raise their hand and say, here's a situation, and for you and I to walk them through with real life as lived experience. You being in addiction, counseling people, me being the mother and a wife of an addict. How did we walk through these things? What works and what doesn't work? Give them embodied experience so they can feel empowered.
That's exactly right. It's like you can read everything you want. You can learn as much as you need to learn about any topic, and it will not matter when you're faced with a situation where you need to act accordingly. And implementation of, how to communicate effectively, how to set boundaries, what enabling looks like, what supporting looks like, even learning about your place in your family dynamic and how that like affects people in your family specific to the roles that each person plays.
Yeah.
You can learn to have better relationships just based on that.
Yeah. I didn't realize that my youngest son had become sort of the golden child in the situation. Didn't he wanted to be unproblematic. He's an overachiever, straight A student, never got in trouble, hardest working kid ever. And you know what? 25, he's got some resentment and he's got some stuff that he's having to work through now. And I didn't see it at the time. I just thought, oh, thank God this one's easier.
Worse.
Yeah, and so, yeah, understanding the family dynamics so that perhaps we can be more it's not about we're all gonna have
Fixing.
family dynamics, but
Yeah.
the more aware we are, I think the less wreckage we can create along the way.
Yeah, or even just like more awareness we have. And even in having that awareness, people recognize that and they see that you're not trying to do harm and that you are, you're wanting a positive outcome of like your relationship with someone. Like you can tell when somebody's trying to like make sure that you guys have like a good dynamic or a good relationship.
Yeah, yeah. So the biggest mistake that I see that people make is trying to do it themselves. You said throw in resources, but there's a form of just like, I've got to fix this, taking on responsibility. And part of that's shame, part of that's responsibility, part of that's guilt. And to me, that's the biggest mistake because you're not just depleting your financial resources, you're depleting your emotional resources, your mental health resources, you're depleting your ability to connect with and communicate with others vulnerably and authentically. You are very likely destroying many other relationships around you that could otherwise be healthy, that could actually be the source of support for you by choosing to do it yourself. It's the most destructive pattern that I see in families. And when they're isolated like that, they just repeat terrible patterns over and over and make a record groove that's so deep they can't get out of it if they try.
Yeah. And it's rooted in responsibility, being responsible for it and being at fault for it, right? Like that's where it's rooted. And one of the best ways that I can describe how incorrect that is the the diverse demographic of women that I've worked with who all end up in the exact same treatment center, right? You have somebody who was born in poverty, in the foster care system. Their lives just looked and seemed so difficult. And then you have another woman who was given everything she ever wanted. Her parents are still together. Her, family dog never died. She went to college, got a job, like all these things,
Mhm,
and they still both end up at the same treatment center. That tells you right there that there is nothing that anybody did
mhm.
that could have put her in the direction of addiction. And
Right?
so it's impossible for you as that person to take them out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did an interview with a friend of mine, Alex, and she was talking about we were trying to talking about destigmatizing addiction because she struggled with alcohol abuse and it imploded her marriage. But she's like, I grew up in a country club family. She's like, my parents got shit faced every weekend and it was just celebrated.
Yeah.
But then they were making fun of the little Jenny across the tracks whose dad was an addict and mom left and, all of that. But the addiction does not discriminate.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
not discriminate. It could happen to anyone. And here's the most important thing that someone ever said to me that changed my whole way of being around it. I had a woman who used to come to my yoga studio. and she was struggling deeply with addiction. I found out later she was like well into heroin addiction, which was quite shocking. I had no idea. And I was sharing about how I was so worried about my son and I wish he would go to treatment, etc., and frustrated I was. And she just looked me in the eye and she had big tears well up and she said, "Can you just please remember that no one wants to be an addict?" It just changed my whole life. Like it softened my heart. I was like, of course he doesn't want this any more than I want this for him. It might seem
think
like he
it's
does at the time, but nobody wants that.
yeah, well, we we hide behind our ego, right? And that makes us look self-righteous or mean or angry, and it's just to hide embarrassment, shame, guilt. And
Hmm.
yeah, like how can you think that starting something that will bring you to like absolute degradation is something that we want? That's
Right?
like a choice that we made.
Yeah.
There's
No
the
one's going to
difference
choose
between
that.
no, absolutely not. It's
No.
just not that's the difference between someone who has an addiction or an addict brain and someone who doesn't. The person who doesn't can very clearly say, "This is doing harmful things to me.
Hmm.
I'm gonna stop."
Hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Full stop. An addict will be like, "This is doing really harmful things to me, but maybe if I do it this way, I can change it." Or maybe right? And that's because the initial feeling of what drugs and alcohol do to us is far more beneficial than the consequences for quite some time.
So talk a little bit about that. I mean, like Gabor Mate talks about how addiction's all about pain.
Yeah, it is.
And so it is beneficial. It's anesthetizing ourselves
Yes.
so that we don't feel pain.
Yeah, I have a whole theory around it too. His is about shame and pain is totally tied into it. I believe that every single person carries shame and that it's generationally
Sure.
passed down. And if
Yeah.
you think about the generation after you when you were growing like a young adult or an adult, we all think that that generation is going to ruin the world, right? Like everyone thought millennials were just the worst generation ever. Everyone, and then I came up and I was like, "Mom, like these people, these kids are just awful." And she's like, "Everyone thinks that." But imagine having, an entire society kind of instill this belief that like you're going to be the one that ruins the world. It's like there is not a person on the planet who doesn't have some kind of internal shame as a result of that. People who have addiction issues, they recognize the relief immediately from using drugs and alcohol, right?
Right.
Which means they subconsciously like experience the shame on a deeper level
Hmm.
where it's like, I know this, my entire life, there's been something telling me that I'm not good enough. And you ask any person who is an addict, and they will tell you, my whole life, I didn't feel good enough. My whole life, I always felt different. My whole life, there was something wrong with me. And it's like, we go however long before you pick up your first drug or drink, 12, 14 years of the nattering, it just doesn't stop. So imagine getting something into your system and all of a sudden that it completely stops, right?
I
Like
remember
it's just
Nick telling me that the first time he did drugs, it was the first time he felt normal.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I didn't understand that because that was not my experience in, growing up. And I was like, what? But I remember being heartbroken by it and just thinking, like, how does it take that to feel normal?
Yeah, well, the things that we tell ourselves about how you're not good in social situations or people don't like you, like it fixes all of that in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Temporarily.
Yeah, I know, but we literally think it's the solution when we're just like, "Oh my god, this is it. We found it. No need to, stop the searches. We've got this." And
So if we can look at people as human beings who are just trying to get out of pain, I think
mhm,
that gives us access to a new way to be with them. We've all been in
100%.
pain. That's the one thing. Maybe I don't have addiction issues, but I've had shame, I've had pain, I've had feelings of not being enough in my life. I think those are the things we can all relate to as human beings.
Absolutely.
We are more alike than we are different. We just have different coping mechanisms. I get a lot of moms and dads in my chairs over here that are like, I don't have any addiction. And then when I get further into it, they're workaholics, they're
Mhm.
achievement
Yeah.
whores. They're
There's
like,
always something. There's
yeah.
always
And they just found a different way to mitigate their shame and pain, a
well,
socially acceptable way.
yes, and the one thing that again, this is a theory that I have,
Hmm.
is that addicts have something called euphoric recall,
Mhm.
And what that means is that we actually do have this, like, this is a real thing, but to tie it into why we use is we can emotionally connect to the benefits of doing something, and we can only intellectually connect to the consequences of doing it. So you can look back and feel like, "Oh my god, I remember what that was like," and think, "Okay, but it did this,"
Mhm.
and but it doesn't affect you the same way.
Well, that's because when you're using the dopamine center and the frontal lobe are like disconnected from each other. So
Absolutely.
you're all go and no, no.
Yeah,
So that part of the brain doesn't remember ever having that moderation. So there's like
yeah,
brain science. And this is another thing we're going to teach people about is like the science of how the brain works in addiction.
and it
And we're going to teach people the science of how their brains and nervous systems are working, reacting to that situation.
yeah. It's
I'm
so
so,
interesting.
so excited for what we're gonna bring, and I'm gonna put in the show notes the link for the family group that you lead on Wednesday nights and the family group that's led by my team on Thursday nights. I'm also gonna put the registration link for this retreat. It will sell out, I think, almost immediately. We have room for 30 people. You could come with your whole family. It's at the Summerland Resort. You can book rooms there, or you can just come for the retreat part of it. If you know someone who loves someone in addiction, please share this episode with them and then also share the information about the family groups because they're free and the retreat. This is life-changing stuff. This is our offering to the planet. I encourage people to invest in themselves because that's an investment in their future happiness and peace. Asha, thanks so much for the work that you do in the world. Thank you so much for being
Having
here.
me
I'm super stoked for what you and I are going to create together.
me too.
It's like Wonder Twins unite. We're going to kill it. And if anyone has any questions, reach out to either of us because this is like important work for both of us in the world and we're here to help.
Mhm.
Until next time.